DJ Scream, heavy in the streets.
We gon' get it, we gon' get it, we gon' get it. We gon' get it, we gon' get it. Get it in blood. Get it in blood. We gon' get it, we gon' get it, we gon' get it. We gon' get it, we gon' get it. Get it in blood. Get it in blood.
Hood rich.
Get it out the mud.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Saints and Appetizers podcast. And this evening, we have some appetizers for you, and some very good appetizers for you. And I'm talking about UFC 308, Ilia Topurai versus Max Holloway. And this, in my opinion, was the first really good pay-per-view card since UFC 300, because you had some bigger names, guys that are like on the cusp of being superstars. But just with all the matchups were like felt like they were put together to get a crazy stoppage or some kind of crazy war, and I feel as if you got that. And on top of that, just going off of picks and prediction, I was 5-0 on my picks for the main card, and 3-2 for the actual predictions of the outcomes of the fight. So let's kind of get into this a little bit. Let's just get into this. So can I get a menu? And so this was an event, this UFC event, UFC 308 Topuria versus Holloway. It was October 26, 2024. So last Saturday at Ethnad Arena in Abu Dhabi United Arab Emirates, and there was no hasn't been announced like the attendance or the total gate or anything like that. But I apologize for people that had watched some of my previous podcasts when talking about this talking about this card, this pay-per-view. I actually thought I don't know why, I need to pay a little bit closer attention when they have any of these events overseas, of the actual start time to it, because I don't think it was till like Friday that I noticed that it was actually at like 1 p.m. Central Time, and I told everyone that it was the standard time for all like UFC pay-per-views for on average, or start at 9 Central, 10 Eastern Time. But this was like in the middle of the day, and that was like really kind of my only knock on this card, is that it was in the middle of the day, and it was such an amazing card. And then after it was over, there's like it's like 4 o'clock, and there's like hardly anything else to look forward to the day. But really, the only thing else holding this card back, besides the start time, kind of the odd start time, even for such some key matchups and really important matchups that could lead to future title fights, was that there wasn't a very long, I guess it wasn't a very long preliminary card, because I think they started the preliminary card at like 9 a.m., 10 a.m. or something, but there weren't very many notable names on there, just a lot of young and up and coming fighters. But I mean, heck, the fight of the night, what came off the preliminary card, it was between Moto Beck Oralba and Mateus Rebecki, and that was a catchweight of 160, and Mateus Rebecki won that by a split decision in just an all-out like war, So that was nice to see some young, up and coming, maybe not quite as well-known fighters get a 50,000 bonus. But anyways, let's get into the main card here. So the first fight on the main card was a middleweight bout between Shahar Magmadov, the Bullet, versus Armin Petrosyan. And I predicted Shahar Magmadov to win this, and I predicted him to get the knockout. But I can't lie, I was a little concerned going in towards, I guess, the end of the second round, the 4:52 mark of the second round. It looked like Armin Petrosyan was winning this fight. I mean, at least on significant strikes, he was up a little bit. a little bit on Shahar Megmadov, but just out of nowhere he hits this KO spinning back fist, not back fist, but a back fist because he spun around and just kind of barely missed with the first one, and then he comes all the way back around with the second one and just sleeps Armand Petrion. So that was a really exciting fight, and just the outcome. That's the first time I can ever remember seeing a double back fist knockout like that. I mean, I've probably seen fighters attempt it, but not come anywhere close to getting as devastating of a knockout by Shahar Magmedov. But definitely, you could tell that this was definitely a, a step up in competition for Shahar Magmedov because Arman Petrion hit him a couple times. It looked like he had him a little bit in trouble. Never really dropped him or anything, but definitely looked like he had him on the hills, and he looked like he was breathing kind of hard, a little kind of digging into his stamina and stuff. But he pulled off the knockout like I expected, but I would have never expected it to come by like KO, spinning back fist, not a TKO, but a KO. He just absolutely uh, slumped Armin Petrosyan. So that was exciting. That was just about as exciting a way you could start off any pay-per-view card with some crazy knockout like that you'd never seen before. All right, now then on to the featherweight bout between Leron Murphy versus Dan Ige, and I had predicted this to be a unanimous decision, and I picked Leron Murphy to win this one, but just kind of similar to the Shahar Magmedov fight. It was a little dicey in the first round and a half or so because Dan Ige definitely didn't seem to respect Leron Murphy's power or striking ability, and I would say that Dan Ige probably won the first round. The only like real, I guess Leron Murphy landed a good elbow in the first round that cut Dan Ige on the forehead, but that was about the only good shot that Leron Murphy landed in the first round. But then in the second round, just kind of like we were predicting with all these fights being majority of them being a striker versus striker, we were just waiting to see who was going to be the first one to try to go for the takedown or try to shoot in and try to make this more of a grappling fight. And it surprised me that it was actually Leron Murphy. So I think that was more him just respecting Dan Ige's power more than anything and acknowledging it. And I think it almost burned him a couple times because I think it was in the first round, not in the first round, but in the second round where he kind of went for the takedown and then got reversed on him and then ended up spending a good portion of the second round on the ground. But I guess they didn't really score anything off of it because he didn't land any ground really significant ground and pound or any or any submission attempts. And then he kind of did the same thing. Like at the end of the third round, he tried to take Dan Ige down, and it looked like he was almost about to get reversed and end up finishing the round on his back. But he was able to maintain and get at least the dominant position on Dan Ige on the ground to at least finish the third round. And I would say he did win the second and the third round, but that was a little surprising that Leron Murphy, who's been pretty much strictly a striker, was definitely the first one to start going for takedowns and definitely trying to change the fight because I think he was very noticeable and recognized that Dan Ige had some knockout power, and he definitely chose at least on that night or day, I guess, chose a different path to victory, and it worked for him. But I thought that was pretty close fight. I was actually a little surprised that it maybe wasn't a split decision or even that Dan Ige won because I think he definitely landed the better shots, but just the wrestling and the controlling that Leron Murphy had in the second and third round, I think that's what edged him the win and edged him the victory. So that's that was right there, just 2-0 with picks and predictions of how the outcome of the fight would be. All right, now then, on to the third fight was a light heavyweight bout between Megmed Ankalov versus Alexander Rakic, and I actually I predicted this one to be a for Megmed Ankalov to get the knockout over Alexander Rakic, but ended up going to decision. It was unanimous decision for Megmod Ankalov. It was 29, 28, 29, 28, 29, 28, and that was all five rounds. And just kind of coming out and kind of similar to the Dan Ige fight to some extent that Alexander Rakic, I think he probably won the first round just with strictly striking. He just landed the better shots and had a better pace. But then in the second and the third round, Megmod Ankalov kind of picked it up a little bit. And I think there was a point in the third round where he took a pretty good shot, and then he started actually grappling a little bit, not trying to go for a takedown, but just trying to control Alexander Rakic, because he landed some pretty good shots, and I think he was getting a little tired at the end of the third round, to where he wanted to show off some of that combat sambo, and it worked, and I think it edged him the fight. And I was a little sketchy, a little concerned that maybe Magmod Ankalov didn't win this fight. I wouldn't have been surprised if it would have went the other way. It was an impressive performance by Alexander Rakic, and kind of not as impressive as a performance for Megmod Ankalov, but Alexander Rakic looked good, and I think he looked good enough to win this. But I'm happy. I'm happy because my at least my pick was right, not my prediction, but my pick was right. And now hopefully we'll get to see Megmed Ankalov versus Alex Pereira for the title, for the light heavyweight title bout. That would be exciting, and be interesting to see now that we've seen Megmed Ankalov, where he's fought someone with such a high caliber of striking, where he had to change up his game a little bit, more just had to push Alexander Rakic up against the cage just to catch his bearings a little bit at the end of the third round. And be interesting going against such an elite striker in Alex Pereira if he just goes full out on the sambo and the wrestling and actually tries for some takedowns, because just after seeing Megmed Ankalov versus Alexander Rakic, I don't think he could stand and win versus Alex Pereira, who's just not it's just such crisp and accurate striking, but it's just the power that he has. He's just devastating power. So I would definitely be looking forward to hopefully seeing that fight. And now then on to the middleweight bout, the co-main event between Hazmat Chimaev versus Robert Whitaker. And I predicted this one too. It seems like there was a lot of people kind of on the Robert Whitaker bandwagon and kind of jumping off the Hazmat Chimaev bandwagon, or maybe just didn't like him to begin with, and just on top of the fact that he hadn't fought for a while. He pulled out of a couple of fights that were against Robert Whitaker, and maybe thinking that he's still even in this fight. I think it was just like an hour before the final chance to check weight, he was able to make weight. So people were thinking, oh, is he as good as he was, or is he as dominant as he was before he got sick and had all the bowel and stomach issues? Well, I mean, I predicted him. I was still backing him. I think it's funny, the trash talk and stuff that he had in previous years, but it seemed like he'd grown up and matured a little bit for this fight, and maybe being sick and having to pull out of those fights, maybe he grew a little bit, because he didn't really have anything negative to say about Robert Whitaker or anything like that. He definitely, after the fight, was saying how he wanted the belt and wanted a shot at the title. But I predicted Hazmat Chimaev to win this, and I predicted him to win it by a choke. I actually said that I predicted him to win it by a Barbaro choke. He won by submission, and it was by a face crank that happened at 3:34 of the first round. And the way the fight started was just like right off the bat, Hazmat Chimaev is looking for the takedown and looking to control Robert Whitaker, and just Robert Whitaker the whole 3 minutes was like scrambling to just try to get back up, and only one time during like that scramble was he able to get back up, but then he got taken right back down. And then he did a good job of like protecting his back for those first 3 minutes, but then just in the scrambles of trying to get back up, Hazmat Chimaev got on his back. And man, I have not seen a tap from a fighter, a UFC fighter, as fast as Robert Whitaker tapped out in this fight. since like Cyril Gahn versus John Jones, when John Jones got him up against the cage and got him in a guillotine choke. Like he just like the second the submission was sunk in, or just even almost sunk in, he's tapping like this, you know. But I guess it came out later that I guess his teeth were starting to go through like his lip and like all in his mouth. So I guess that's the power of Hazmat Jamal with that face crank, like busted up a bunch of his teeth, and they were cutting up the inside of his mouth. And well, I think like they're saying something with the teeth, and then maybe like his jaw got dislocated. They showed pictures of it later where like his bottom teeth were all like turned like backwards. So I think there's some fighters, that are pretty tough that even with something like that happening, they may have still not tapped out as fast. But can't blame him. He's wanting to protect himself on in the long term, looking at his long term future than a loss that he was probably going to take to Hazmat Chimaev anyway. Got to get that dental work now. So that is see though that's 4-0 on picks and 3-2, yeah, and 3-2 on, yeah, and then 3-1 so far on predictions, actual methods, outcomes. And now then on to the main event of the night was a featherweight championship bout between Ilia Topuria, the champion, versus Max Holloway, the challenger. And I thought that both of these guys have like similar skills, and Max Holloway's so tough that this was probably going to go to decision. So I didn't get the method and the necessary outcome of this fight right, but I did pick Ilia Topuria to win just because I thought they're that Max Holloway and Ilia Topuria, I thought both of their striking games are pretty equal. They both are really good boxers, and Max Holloway had never been knocked out, and maybe had only just been dropped once in his fight against Justin Gaethje. So I just wasn't expecting Ilia Topuria to win this by knockout, but he came out, and you could say that in the first two, maybe into the third round, that Ilia Topuria, or not Ilia Topuria, that Max Holloway was maybe won the first two rounds, was just strictly striking. But in the second round, Ilia Topuria started going for some takedowns, and I don't think he was going for the takedowns to actually try to win the fight like that. I think he was just doing that to give Max Holloway, something else to think about. And it was funny when the fight started out, Ilia Topuria came like right to the middle of the octagon and was pointing down like let's start swinging like crazy right now, not at the last 10 seconds of the fight. But Max Holloway, he definitely respected Ilia Topuria's power, and it turns out he had to, because at the 134 mark of the third round, he got KO punches, and it was very similar to the Alexander Volkanovski fight. I think Max Holloway put up a little bit better of a fight than Alexander Volkanovski, but it was very similar how it ended, with Ilia Topuria kind of cutting off the cage and getting Max Holloway backed up against the fence, and then landing some crazy combination combos that ended up dropping Max Holloway for like only the second time in his career, and just straight up flatlining him, leaving him slumped against the cage afterwards. So that was wild to see that. So there's just some crazy outcomes, stuff that you'd never seen before. Spinning back fist, Max Holloway getting knocked out. Dude's literally his mouth and teeth and jaw getting crushed by Hazmat Chimaev. A really wild fight. So that put me at 5-0 on picking the right fighters to win, which I think, in my opinion, I think most of those fighters were the favorites anyways. I guess there's kind of maybe like a coin flip between Hazmat Chimaev and Robert Whitaker, because Robert Whitaker had looked so good in his last couple fights, and he's been a lot more active than Hazmat Chimaev, but and he's on a bit of a winning streak. But that definitely didn't come true. That didn't end up helping Robert Whitaker at all in this fight. So now let's go over some fight of the nights here. So we already talked about Moto Beck Earlbaugh versus Mateus Rebecki, who won the $50,000 bonus for fight of the night. And then in the performance of the night, it shouldn't be no surprise that the three crazy finishes in this fight all got fight of the night bonuses. So Ilia Topuria for his knockout over Max Holloway, and Hazmat Chimaev with the literally, I say, like a face crank, more like a face crush over Robert Whitaker, and then Shahar Magmadov with the spinning back fist plural, not just back fist, but plural spinning back fist KO over Arman Petrion. So just after this fight, so this looks like this should kind of like set up some title fights. We already talked quite a bit about Megmad Ankalov hopefully getting a title shot at Alex Pereira's light heavyweight belt, but I think Hazmat Chimaev should be for the middleweight title, should be next in line for Dracus du Plessis' belt, and they have very similar styles. I wouldn't say Dracus du Plessis' ground game is as good as Hazmat Chimaev, probably just because he's not as big and not as strong. But I think he still has a very good ground game, and I would hope that would help him in defense. But I think he also has probably better striking than Hazmat Chimaev. So I think that would be a really exciting matchup. There's some people out there saying they want to see Sean Strickland versus Dracus du Plessis first, or they want to see Sean Strickland versus Hazmat Chimaev first to decide who is next in line for Dracus du Plessis' middleweight championship bout. But I think Hazmat Chimaev has done enough, and Sean Strickland's already had enough chances at the belt, and he had the belt and wasn't able to hold on to it for very long, wasn't able to defend it. So I don't really care to see that. And then in the featherweight championship bout, it looked like Ilia Topuria at the end of the fight was saying that he was wanting, and like really one of the only fighters that he was wanting to fight was give Alexander Volkanovski a rematch, because he talked about how he was a fighting champion and he won the belt and defended it multiple times, and definitely wanted to give him his rematch. So I'd be excited to see all of those fights. It'd be amazing if they could somehow work it out and have all those fights end up on the same card. Because Megmad Ankalov, Hazmat Chimaev, and Ilia Topuria, they hardly took very much damage in this fight. I think possibly another contender for the Ilia Topuria belt could maybe be Diego Lopez. If it's not a rematch with Alexander Volkanovski, it could be Diego Lopez too, which I would be good with seeing that. But I definitely would be interested to see what Diego Lopez's like game plan for that is, because I don't think his striking is as good and as sharp. It'd be interesting to see if he goes for wrestling and ground game, even though I think Ilia Topuria's is ground game is really good. I thought that's how he was going to end up beating Max Holloway. So good card. Just a little I don't know. This left something to desire because it was so early in the day to where it would have been. I think it would have been better if it would have been 9, like almost midnight, by the time you got that crazy knockout, the first knockout ever of Max Holloway. But on to UFC 309, and the card didn't have a great early prelims or preliminary card, just in regards to like notable fighters, even though the fight of the night did come off of the prelims. But now I guess we will be on to UFC 309, John Jones versus Stipe Miocic, and that is November 16th, 2024, Madison Square Garden, New York City, New York, United States. And I just hope that fight stays together. I hope there's not some kind of fallout there where you don't end up getting to see it and then they push it back months, or if it just never happens. So see other fights. Charles Oliveira versus Michael Chandler, which I think that was supposed to originally be Conor McGregor, but I don't know if we'll ever see him fight. And then Bo Nichols versus Paul Craig, and Chris Weidman versus Eric Anders. Okay card. Like most cards, I think I like there to be a heavyweight bout or multiple title shots on the card. But I guess there is the heavyweight bout because it's the heavyweight championship belt that's being defended. But that will be in I guess really that's only in like about 2 weeks. So it'd be exciting, and I'm ready. And like I said, I hope the fight holds together, so we don't end up having to see any interim belts or anything, or or step ins, because I don't know if I would believe that. Trying to remember what his name is here. Let's see. I think it was this far back here. Let's see. Tom Aspinall. Yeah, I would be really surprised if John Jones or Stipe Miocic falls out of this fight, if one of them will actually fight Tom Aspinall. But I guess we have a little more than 2 weeks to find out. But anyways, I think that's about all I have here for you. So can I get a check, please?